to the National University of Ireland, Galway, the place that rewards everything you are, the university of you, for you. Your campus, where you work hard and play hard, where you are surrounded by history and are part of a campus re-engineering for a sustainable future, right in the heart of Galway City. Your research, where you think hard and explore hard, where innovation is driven and purpose is discovered, with world-class research facilities and strong industry partnerships. Your student life, where you laugh hard and you run hard, where your fun happens and your friendships are made. 110 societies, 50 clubs, and state-of-the-art sporting facilities. Your support, where you land hard and you get up again, where you can depend on us to help you along the way with career development, disability support, financial advice and access support. Your education, where you learn hard and where you explore infinite possibilities. Where your performance excels, your passions are explored and your achievements are rewarded. Where you become. With over 70 undergraduate courses and inspiring minds for 175 years. This is your future. This is NUI Galway.
Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's second Arts Taster Day here at NUI Galway. My name is Elaine Ray, and I'm going to give you an introduction to arts at NUI Galway. We'd love to be seeing you in person, but I really hope that by the end of today, you'll have gotten a really good introduction to lots of different areas in the arts, and in particularly in social sciences today. And I'm sure we will see you very soon back on campus and look forward to meeting with you. So I'm just going to start off by telling you a little bit about the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Celtic Studies at NUI Galway. So NUI Galway is made up of 4 different colleges. So there's the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Celtic Studies, the College of Business, Public Policy and Law, the College of Science and Engineering, and the College of Medicine, Nursing and Health Sciences. And the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Celtic Studies is actually one of the founding colleges back of the university. So it was founded back in 1845. And it's the largest college in NUI Galway and has almost 6,000 students. So it's a really, really big college. Within the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Celtic Studies, we offer 24 different undergraduate courses. And these courses range from very, very flexible courses, such as our flagship course, the BA Joint Honours, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about, to more specialised courses. But within every course, there's going to be a degree of flexibility so that you can shape the degree according to your own interest areas. There's skills modules integrated into each course, and that's to give you both the hard and soft skills necessary for success in your future career or in future study. And there are work experience and study abroad opportunities available on almost all of our courses. So before we go into the presentation a little bit more, I'd really like to hear from you. And I'd really like to hear what you think of, or the word that you think of when you hear an arts degree. So if you could go onto a website called slido.com, either on your computer or on your phone, and you'll be asked to enter a code. And if you can enter 97207, and then you should be able to see a poll. And it says, what do you think of when you hear an arts degree? And if you could put in your responses, I'm going to view them here, and I'd just be really interested to hear what you think. So I'll just give a couple of moments for people to do that. Oh, there's some really good answers coming in here already that I can see. Creativity, languages, humanities, education, and these are all really, really spot on kinds of words used to describe the arts. There's other words such as freedom, really like that. And yes, there's so much freedom in an arts degree and within all of our arts degrees. Culture, flexibility, teaching, which is a big one as well. And today you're going to learn about different opportunities for if you're interested in doing teaching. I'm just going to share a few more. Oh wow, there's loads. Music and drama, yeah. Classics, very good. Performance, teaching in secondary school, practical, absolutely. And lots of our courses have work experience and very practical elements to the courses as well. Diversity, diverse, really love that. And yes, there's great diversity in the types of subjects that we offer and in the types of courses that we offer as well. Creativity, history, interesting. Absolutely, and I hope that after today you'll have gotten lots of information about lots of different subjects and courses within the College of Arts, a wide range, flexible, broad, yeah, absolutely. Acting, fun, yeah, I hope a lot of our courses are fun. And there are some comments around employment, state jobs, yeah, and we're going to talk about employment opportunities as well in this presentation. So thank you so much all of you for putting in your thoughts, and I'm really impressed that so many of you have a really good sense of what an arts degree is. So an arts degree, yes, is a way to describe a group of degrees that include the studies of areas in the humanities, social sciences, or creative arts. So the humanities looks at areas such as languages, literature, history, and philosophy, and lots of you guys mentioned these areas. The creative arts, which NUI Galway is really well known for, includes areas such as drama, music, film, and creative writing. And we have courses in all of those areas here in the College of Arts, Social Sciences and Celtic Studies. And then the social sciences, which really looks at human behaviour and the way that society acts, includes subject areas such as psychology, geography, economics, law, politics, and sociology. And today's Taster Day really looks at a lot of these different areas in the social sciences, and it's going to be really, really interesting. So that's a quick overview of what an arts degree is. I suppose why an arts degree from NUI Galway in particular. So as lots of you mentioned, as I'm going to tell you, there's lots of choice within our arts degrees, and there's really a chance to shape your own degree. As I said, our degrees range from the very flexible to the more specialised, but all of the degree options will have some flexibility, either to choose another art subject alongside the area of the degree, or you'll have some choice within the modules that you might take. So there is lots of flexibility. There's a chance to learn languages on many of our degrees and travel. So all language students will study abroad as part of their undergraduate degree, and there are opportunities for non-language students as well. As I mentioned, there's a real focus on skills development, and that's really so that you're going to be successful in your future career. And I also mentioned that there are work placement opportunities on many degree programs, and some degree programs have compulsory work experience so that they're part of the curriculum of that particular course. And then the degrees open up pathways to a variety of different careers and opportunities for further study, and we'll look at those in later in the presentation. So in terms of the undergraduate courses that we've on offer, as I mentioned, we actually have 24 different undergraduate courses, which means 24 different CAO entries. The main arts course that people think of, and I suppose it's our flagship arts course within the college, is the BA Joint Honours, which is that very flexible joint major degree, which basically means that you study 2 subjects to degree level. Then we have another structure, what we call it the BA Connect structure, and that's a combination of the joint honours degree with an additional specialism, either in children's studies, human rights, or performing arts studies. And then we have what we call our denominated degrees, and these are all specialised courses in a particular subject area. So you can see them all here, areas like journalism, psychology, history, social sciences. We have a specific degree program for social sciences, English and creative writing, global languages, government. So these are more specialised degrees, but there are, on some of these degree programs, there are the opportunity to study an additional arts course, or as I mentioned, you'll have lots of opportunity in the types of modules that are offered. Just to kind of say from the outset about the requirements for all arts courses. So each arts course will have its own points entry and may have its own requirements, but every arts course, the minimum required will be a grade H5 in at least 2 subjects and passes in 4 other subjects at O6 or H7 level in the Leaving Certificate, including Irish, English, another language, and 3 other subjects recognised for entry purposes. And I just wanted to stress the other language element, because all of our arts courses at NUI Galway require a 3rd language. And so I know that many of you will be thinking about what subjects you're going to select to study for your Leaving Certificate cycle. And it's just really important to say, if you are thinking about doing any of our arts courses, and we'd really love you to consider one of them, you will need a third language to be able to gain entry onto any of them. So I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about the BA Joint Honours. As I mentioned, that's the main biggest course that we have in the College of Arts, and it's the I suppose the typical arts degree that people think about. So it's either a 3 or 4 year degree depending on the subjects that you choose, and it's a really flexible degree. So this is our most flexible degree. It has actually over 300 different subject combinations. We have a 7 different subject groups, and in first year students will choose one subject. Well, they will choose 3 subjects in total, but only one per group. And it's really important when you're choosing your 3 subjects that you choose subjects, well, primarily that you're interested in, either that you know you're interested in because you've studied them at second level, or that you think that you might be interested in from your research, and subjects that go really, well together and reflect your future career ambitions as well. But mostly I would say it's important to choose subjects that you're interested in, because that will make your university experience so much better. In terms of choosing your subjects then, these are all the different subjects that you can choose within the BA Joint Honours degree. And as you can see, there are lots of different subjects across each of these 7 different groups. And you're going to get an introduction to many of these subjects today, actually. So in first year, you will choose 3 subjects, as I mentioned, and you can choose any, but only one per group. So for example, you could choose law in group 2, English in group 4, and history in group 6, but you just wouldn't be able to choose 2 subjects in the same subject group. Global media is our newest subject, and this is just starting for students coming in September 2021. And just to say, we always get asked, when do you choose your subjects? And you actually don't need to choose your subjects until you are offered a place on the course and you register. So you don't need to choose your subjects on the CAO application. That's just something that we often get asked, because I know that can be a little confusing, but no, you won't need to choose them until you get offered a place on the course. In terms of our subject requirements, so all of the subjects that you'll have seen in that table can be taken without needing to have done any prior study in any of those areas, with the exception of French and Gaeilge. So all other European languages apart from French, that's Italian, German and Spanish, they can all be taken from beginner's level or intermediate level if you have studied them. But if you haven't studied them, you can take them from beginner's level. But if you wish to study French, either in the BA Joint Honours or in any of the other degree programmes, you will need to have studied French at Leaving Cert and have gotten a minimum of a H4. If you're interested in studying Gaeilge, either as part of the BA Joint Honours or another course, you will need to have acquired a H5 in the Leaving Certificate. But these are the only 2 subjects that do require any particular requirements or prior study. So as I mentioned, the structure of the BA Joint Honours programme is that you choose your 3 subjects in first year. After first year, you carry on with just 2 of those 3 subjects. So you pick the 2 that you're most interested in, that you feel best reflect what you might be interested in doing in your future career. So you'll take 2 of the 3 into second year. And then you'll either go straight into final year, or any student choosing a language will have an additional year and will go abroad in their third year. And there are also some limited work placement opportunities as well, and some limited opportunities for students who are interested or who are not studying a language to study abroad as well. In terms of then the next structure that I mentioned is what we call our BA Connect degrees, and these are 4-year programs. They're structured in the exact same way as the BA Joint Honours, but they have an additional specialism. And the specialisms we offer are children's studies, human rights, and performing arts studies. And you're going to hear about a couple of these today as well. So in terms of our Connect courses, these, as I mentioned, are the same as a BA Joint Honours in structure, but with the additional specialism. So you're going to choose your 3 subjects, again in first year, and then you'll also study your specialism alongside that. In second year, you'll continue with 2 of the 3 subjects you chose in first year, along with a specialism. In your third year, you'll focus exclusively on the specialism. So for example, if you're studying the BA Arts with Human Rights, you will either study abroad and study human rights in a university abroad. You might go on a work placement, either nationally or internationally, that where you'll work in the area of human rights, or you'll do something like an applied project in human rights. So it will focus exclusively on the specialism. And then your final year, you'll just study the 2 subjects that you selected in second year. So that this structure is great if you have an interest in the area of the specialism, but you also want to study the joint honours degree. And then, as I mentioned, we have lots of more specialised degrees. In fact, we have 21 of them, and these are more specialised in particular subject areas. They all have their own individual CAO codes, and they focus on particular areas of study such as music, drama, journalism, global media. Because we have a new programme in global media, a specialised degree in global media, as well as it being a subject available in the BA Joint Honours. And these are all 4 years in duration, and again, similarly to the Connect programs, there's a lot of opportunity for studying abroad or doing work experience, in particular in the third year of the programs. And as I mentioned at the beginning, some of the courses give the opportunity to study another art subject along with the area of the degree, and one of these would be the BA in Music, for example. So as part of this degree, you'll study music and another art subject. So if you wanted to become a music teacher, for example, it would be really important to take an art subject that could also be taught at second level along with music. And this is just a list of all of the different denominated or specialised 4-year courses that we offer and their individual CAO codes. So there's a really, really good choice of programmes in the College of Arts at NUI Galway. In terms of the career paths and career opportunities, well, there are really so many, and they're all very varied. I suppose one thing, you know, that we do here is that people aren't really that sure what kind of jobs you can do with an arts degree, and the answer is there are just so many different opportunities. So yes, you know, many students will go on into do teaching either at primary level, secondary level, or in universities or in other third level institutions. It's just important to note that the majority, if you are doing an arts course, most people will then need to go on and do a master's in either primary or secondary education then to be able to teach at primary, secondary level. However, we do actually have 2 specific courses at undergraduate level that will enable you to teach maths and computer science straight after your undergraduate degree, so you wouldn't need to go on and do a master's. And then the range of careers that people have with an arts degree, as I mentioned, is so varied. So, you know, there's careers like business executive, investment managers, marketing managers, public relations managers, so careers in business, then careers in the creative arts industry. So we have lots of students who go on to work in production, in theatre, actors, in lots of different areas of drama. Then there's a whole stream of careers in journalism and media, broadcasting, social media, TV. So kind of more traditional journalism roles, and then really new and tech roles in the area of media as well. Then there are students that go on and to do work in different areas of the public service. So that could be things like, you know, working in the army or joining the guards. It could also be in the civil service or in the diplomatic services as well. And then, for example, if you are a student who has studied languages, you might go on and work in translation. And there's lots of different opportunities for graduates with languages as well. So there really are so many different courses, so many different career opportunities with our courses. What I would say is it's totally okay at this point not to know what you want to do, and lots of our students will be figuring this out throughout their career and throughout their course. And the great thing is that we have a wonderful career development centre at NUI Galway that helps you plan your career with your arts degree. So there's lots of different events, there's lots of support in terms of interviewing skills, putting together your CV, and introducing students to future employers as well. So you're supported throughout your course in really finding out what your future career opportunities are, and in fact what you might like to work at as well. So just to say, if you are interested in finding out more, you can download our prospectus, which is available online. We have lots of different resources on our website, including a number of podcasts from our students. So that's a really good way of getting a sense of the different courses that we offer. And we'll be having our open day on May 8th. And unfortunately, this is also going to be a virtual open day, but we would love you to join, and we'll have representatives from all of the courses that I discussed today. And so if you have any questions about any particular course or subject, please join the open day. We would love to speak with you. And as I mentioned, we'd love to be hopefully meeting you on campus in the next academic year. And so just before I finish up, I just said we'll leave you with a quote. I think it's something nice to end on. And it's a quote from Roald Dahl. So I began to realize how important it was to be an enthusiast in life. If you're interested in something, no matter what it is, go at it full speed, embrace it with both arms, hug it, love it, and above all, become passionate about it. Lukewarm is no good. And I think this quote is really important because, as I mentioned, it's just so important when you're trying to figure out what you might like to do at university, to do something that you're really interested in and passionate about. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Chris Noon, who's going to bring you through psychology at NUI Galway.
Sorry, Chris, you're on mute, Chris.
Of course, that would happen. So sorry about that, everyone. Just give me 1 second. Okay, hi everyone. You're very welcome. I'm here to talk to you about studying psychology at NUI Galway. So, I mean, the first big question that you need to ask yourself when you're considering studying psychology is, what is psychology? What is psychology to you? And I think when I was considering studying psychology, and when I talked to a lot of people about being a psychologist, the immediate assumption is often that you are somebody who helps somebody with mental health, and that role we would usually refer to as a clinical psychologist or counseling psychologist. But those are just two roles out of many possible roles within psychology, and there are many other roles beyond psychology where you can apply what you learn from psychology. So you'll find people who are psychologists or working with psychology in many different fields. So you have sports psychologists, you could have educational psychologists, consumer psychologists, neuropsychologists, and then neuroscientists would often, have a background in psychology as well. People working as organizational psychologists, helping organizations, function better or recruit the kind of people that they want to recruit. You would have health psychologists. That's a field that I work in a lot, where we study people's behavior in terms of their physical health, but we also study the behavior of healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, other types of healthcare professionals, to see if there's any ways that that we can help improve their practice. You would have psychologists working in settings like the guards. Like one of my colleagues has done a lot of consultation with the guards, and many other settings beyond. So psychology is a field that opens up a lot of opportunities for you. So I saw some of the words that you were coming up with when you were describing arts were like flexibility, creativity, options. These are all words that apply to psychology as well. So if we were to put a definition on psychology, you know, we can look back to the late 19th century, because psychology is actually quite a young discipline. You know, if you think of other disciplines in the university, you know, other sciences like physics and biology and medicine have been around for obviously thousands of years, as of many of the subjects that are options within the College of Arts. But psychology is really just around for maybe just over 100 years. And it was initially defined as the science of the inner world, so a way of distinguishing it from physical sciences that study the outside world. The science of internal experiences, and in the early 20th century, the focus became more on not just what was going on inside people's minds, but what they do. So this behavior became an important focus. So now we kind of mix these definitions together. I mean, there's still many different ways of defining psychology, but the definition that I like the most talks about psychology as being the science of the experience and behavior of individuals. So it's, you know, it's about what's going on inside somebody's mind, but also how does that play out in their behavior. And it's focused on individuals, but we're conscious of how people's environment affects their behavior and their experience. You know, because we're not, you know, we're not just going around without any awareness or involvement with the people and the places that are around us. We're very much affected by our environment, and we want to take this into account as psychologists. So this may look like a very busy slide, but it's just to show that we like to focus on people's behavior within their context. So we sometimes will focus on, some psychologists will focus on interactions with friends and peers. Some people will focus on interactions with family. We'll look at differences across different parts of culture, different types of countries, growing up, learning different languages. All of these different things can affect different aspects of psychology. And of course, we look at differences across time as well. You know, behavior in children is different to behavior in adolescence and so on. So there's a huge range of things that we can focus on in psychology. And an important thing to notice is that psychology is a science. Okay, the goals of science are sometimes described as the following: to describe, predict, control, and explain phenomena. And in psychology, we're trying to describe behavior, predict behavior, control behavior, and explain behavior. And of course, there are applied psychologists, like many of the people, the roles that I mentioned earlier, that apply the findings of psychological science in practice. So, you know, clinical psychologists who are working with people to improve mental health, they're doing that from an evidence-based perspective. That there have been, they're basing what they do on research that has found, you know, what is the best thing to do for the person that they're working with. So I thought I'd take you through a very quick example of this kind of process or examples of describing, predicting, controlling, and explaining behavior. And I thought we'd take the example of procrastination, because I'm sure it's something you've all experienced, that you know, you're in TY now. You've a very flexible and interesting year, but you know, the next couple of years you'll have the Leaving Cert coming up, and lots of hard work and study ahead, And I'm sure a lot of the times when you're supposed to be studying, you'll be trying to do anything else but study. And that's, you know, that's what procrastination is. So if we were starting out studying procrastination, we might just try and describe different types of procrastination, like in the cartoon on the right here. And once we've done that, we can try and figure out what predicts procrastination and how can we tell whether people will, you know, engage in these different types of procrastination. So we have the research by psychologists focusing on procrastination in students has found that there are a number of different things that can help us accurately predict whether people are going to procrastinate or not. So one is task aversiveness. So that means like how much is the thing that they're supposed to be doing something that they just don't want to do, they don't feel like doing. So it's a pretty obvious one. But other ones are maybe not quite as obvious, like people's fear of failure may be something that encourages them to procrastinate. Their skill in decision making, maybe people who are better at making decisions are less likely to procrastinate because they know, okay, even though I don't want to do this study, it's the right thing to do. People who tend to take more risks are more likely to procrastinate because they'll think, well, look, it'll work out fine in the end. People who are more perfectionist are less likely to procrastinate. And people who are better at self-regulation, who can kind of control themselves, are less likely to procrastinate too. So that just shows, you know, there's a whole lot of work that we can do as psychologists to try and predict whether people will engage in certain behaviors or not. And then controlling behavior sounds very sounds very suspicious, but what we mean by controlling behavior is being able to develop interventions that will support people to engage in the kind of behavior that they want to engage in. And this is this graph is probably looks like a foreign language to you at the moment, which is fine. But basically what it's showing is a bunch of different types of studies that have tried to reduce procrastination in various different ways. And any of these, they look like TIE fighters from Star Wars, if you're familiar with those. Any of those that are crossing this dotted line mean that they didn't work. Okay, so we can see there's a few that didn't, so that these ones did work, and they tend to be using something called CBT, which is a type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. So the last step then would be to try and explain behavior, and we might want to explain why does CBT work in this instance to help people stop procrastinating. And so we need to come up with a theory. So our theory could start with our predictors of procrastination, and we can think about things like not feeling you're going to do a good job when you study, but you need to study, so that makes you feel bad and puts you in a negative mood, so you do something else to distract yourself from the negative mood. So then we could apply cognitive behavioral therapy, which means a key part of that is noticing when you're feeling negative and replacing that with another thought and avoiding the negative mood that makes you procrastinate. So that's just an example of a research process in psychology. And we do a lot of research here in Galway on health and well-being and on things to do with brain and behavior. So we have lots of research facilities that you could use if you studied with us. There's me getting my brain scanned a couple of years ago. And if you want to study psychology with us, there's two options that you can do that through. The first is to study the Denominated Psychology program. So this is an accredited program, which means that the Psychological Society of Ireland recognizes it as a as a high quality course to study psychology in. It's 4 years long, and you need the same requirements as was mentioned earlier by Lane, and there's usually around 25 people taken into this course, and in the 4 years, you study a range of different aspects of psychology. You'll be introduced to some aspects like cognitive psychology, theories of personality, social psychology, psychology of learning, developmental psychology, and biological psychology. And then I teach research methods in first year. And then you'll revisit many of these as you go through year 2 and on to final year. In year 3 will include options to either study abroad, do a work placement, do a research placement with us, engage in service learning, which would be kind of working in the community, or more elective psychology modules. Another option is to study psychological studies, which involves doing less modules in psychology and then taking on an additional arts subject. So you have the same exactly the same options or the same modules in the first year, but then in year 2 and the final year, you would study fewer psychology modules than in denominated psychology. But you would also be studying another art subject, and you would end up with a degree in that art subject plus psychological studies. After completing that, if you want to kind of top up your degree to your psychological studies degree to the same level as our denominated psychology, you can do a course that's called the Higher Diploma in Psychology Conversion. So that basically fills in the modules that you hadn't done that the denominated psychology students had done, and it's a 1-year course. So by the end of that, you would have the equivalent of a denominated psychology accredited degree. So does anybody have any questions about studying psychology? Well, we can take a minute or two to try and answer any questions that you have. If you go to menti.com and you put in this code, or if you use this QR code, you'll be able to ask any questions, type in any questions, and they'll be sent to me, and I'll be able to answer them. One question that's often asked is about the possibilities for studying abroad. So we do have a number of universities that we have relationships with for the exchange of students, and those include Padua in Italy, Salzburg in Austria, and Munich in Germany, and Maastricht in the Netherlands. So those are all options for studying abroad in the 3rd year of the course, if that's something you're interested in doing. And another question is that's come up here is how would you become a clinical psychologist? That's often what people are interested in doing. Usually you would need to do an additional course after your undergraduate, a master's degree. Then it's recommended to do some experience, get some experience in as an assistant psychologist, and then you would do a 3-year doctorate in clinical psychology. Okay, so somebody's asked what's the hardest type of physiology that we do in psychology. Well, it would mostly focus on 2 areas, the physiology of the brain and the physiology of the stress system, how we experience stress. So it's not difficult, and it's very interesting. So somebody's asked, is it a tough course? Well, I mean, it's very competitive in the first year, and that's something I should mention is there is the option of starting with the arts course, the open arts course, and if you get into the top 15 of psychological studies in first year, you're invited to join denominated psychology, and then also it's only the top 100 of students from first year that are offered a place in psychological studies. So it is possible that you would, select your arts subject, select psychological studies as one of your subjects in first year, but then not be able to proceed with it if you don't get into the top 100 students. We'd usually have about 300 to 400 students in first year, and generally most people who want to continue with it do proceed, and some people just take psychological studies for 1 year just as something that they're interested in doing for a little while, but they have the other two options from first year that they actually want to proceed with. So usually most people manage to get through. Okay, so I think that's all I have time for. So just want to wish you all best of luck with the rest of your transition year, and of course with your studies for your Leaving Cert, and hopefully we'll see you in Galway in years to come.
You are live. Yeah, you can go now.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. Sorry, I just, okay. Yeah, so welcome. This is a presentation on philosophy. My name is Heike Felsmann. I work in philosophy. I'm the lead of the discipline at the moment. And so what I want to do today is to give you a bit of a sense of what doing philosophy in our department could look like. Philosophy is ultimately about thinking. So it's not that we don't teach you anything. Like Socrates said, he can't teach anybody anything. He can only make them think. We want to make you think, and we want to make you think in a number of quite different areas. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a sense of what that could entail. So what philosophy is about is really the systematic use of critical reasoning to engage with fairly fundamental questions. And but there can be all kinds of questions. But usually what we want to look at is what is often called the big ideas. And more specifically, they're questions that are contestable. So we can ask, we can have different opinions on it and we can argue about them. They're common, so they're a question we can share that we have as a common human experience. They're central, so they're important to what it means to be a human being, and they're connected to our human experience, so we can relate to them. So even though when you think about philosophy, you may often think, well, this is super abstract, it's the nature of being or things like that. They are questions that have been asked for thousands of years in some cases, and some of these questions are very, very new. So I work in the ethics of information technologies. I'm working on robots and artificial intelligence. So these are really, really new questions, but they link in with questions of how we experience being a human. And so, for example, in relation to robots, I actually use some theories by Aristotle to think about it, what it means to be in a relationship, what it means to be in a community. And so what we're trying to do is to use some of these old established and shared questions that we may have to apply to fairly contemporary issues and to give us a way of thinking about it that may be a little bit out of the box, that may allow you to think about it in different ways than what maybe you do in your everyday life. And so with us, you can study developing those skills about thinking about those kinds of questions. So just to give you a sense of what that might entail, because that may have sounded a little bit too abstract. So I was trying to come up with some questions that we actually do discuss at the moment. So one of the areas that you would be studying at the very beginning and throughout your studies, if you choose to continue with it, is the area of logic and critical thinking. And so what we'd be looking at is arguments and fallacies, for example. So how do we present our thoughts? What is the structure of thoughts that leads us to correct thinking? And in what ways can we go wrong? And sometimes with the right kind of rhetoric, we may be tempted to misunderstand things or think something is proven when it actually is not. And so we're going to try to help you to learn how to think straight and identify certain patterns of misunderstandings. And so, for example, that can be applied to questions of what arguments and logical fallacies can we find in discussions, for example, on everyday, on current affairs issues like COVID vaccines. So what type of evidence, what type of arguments do we need to look at in understanding what kinds of things to believe and what kinds of things to potentially be skeptical about? We also look at the history of philosophy, and in first year, one of our bigger topics is a module on the history of philosophy, starting with ancient philosophy and going to modern contemporary philosophy. And so, for example, a question that could be helpful in thinking about our lives at the moment is is the ancient Epicurean concept of ataraxia, which means a kind of calmness of the mind, helpful for understanding our encounter with pandemic restrictions. And so how is that relevant? Well, it is, the Epicureans were philosophers who were working in times of fairly big changes in their societies, and who were looking at how can we live a good life even when a lot of our external things are uncertain and are under threat, and we still want to live a happy life. And so they developed an approach that basically looked at how to be happy in contexts in which a lot of uncertainty is outside, and what kinds of things can we rely on. And so what they were saying is friendship is one of the things we can rely on. Not being too much taken by external goods and external issues like power will be something that will help us to live well in situations of difficulties. And so those kinds of questions can be easily applied to our current situation. We may be very much disagreeing with the answer that finding a kind of peace of mind is what we need to do. We may be saying, well, maybe we actually need to make sure we change things in our environment. But those are proposals that we can investigate and think about. And so this is not just relevant, let's say, through ancient philosophy. The similar ideas, for example, we find in Asian philosophy, and one of our lecturers is specialized in Asian philosophy and will introduce students to those ideas. So that is what you can do in second and third year. How can we capture the richness of emotions in philosophical concepts and theories? So often we have experiences that maybe are difficult to capture, that we find are really important for our lives, but at the same time are not that easy to talk about, where we think, well, maybe we need art, maybe we need different ways of communicating and capturing our understanding. And we have engagement in the department with different questions, different approaches on how to best capture ideas that we think are important. So phenomenology is one method of trying to capture ideas. So one of our lecturers, Professor Murhu, he works on the phenomenology of emotions. He's worked on love, and so there's questions on how do we capture those with different philosophical methodologies. The philosophy of mind is another approach that looks at what happens with, how should we understand what happens in our minds, and what is consciousness, and there's different models, some of them very closely related to psychology, as we're listening to Chris before. So there's an area of philosophy that very much engages with psychological research, neuroscience, but there's also ways of engaging that maybe come more from the arts end of things, that take into account literature and aesthetics. Ethics is a really big area in our department. So we have at the moment 3 lecturers who are working in the area of ethics, and we have different specialisms. So one is environmental ethics, the other is political philosophy, and my area is technology ethics and healthcare ethics. And so questions those may include how should we think about our obligations to nature, the environment, and other living beings? These are really, really current questions, obviously, in relation to climate change, in relation to the degradation of habitats. And so we are looking at different theories and different ways of justifying maybe why, what arguments are there to be a committed vegan? What arguments are there to understand our obligation towards animals who maybe do not care for us, but we may still have an obligation towards them? How can we understand that we maybe have obligations to the whole living sphere that may not just be our own self-interest? So when we think about climate change, we often say, well, this is risky for our communities and this is risky for human life. But maybe there's other ways of thinking about it as well, in terms of having obligations to our to the context that we live in, that do not just refer to us being harmed or benefited. And then maybe in the more social end of things, so Richard Hull, he's a political philosopher and bioethicist, and he works especially on disability ethics. And I work, my own background is actually between psychology and philosophy, and I work a lot on technology ethics. So a question, for example, where both of our interests fit in and where we actually both do work in that field would be, should we use robots to care for persons with disabilities? So is it okay to use technologies like robots to provide care for persons with dementia, for example? Thinking again about the pandemic context, we found human contact was not possible for the longest time due to the infection and the high risk of from the illness. And so would having something like a robot available, would that have been a good idea? And would that have been, if you interact with a robot, is that a kind of engagement that we think is valuable? Is that something that makes people happy, or is it something that we potentially would be worried about what it means if human care may be replaced or supplemented in a more substantial way by those technologies? And so it's about thinking about the benefits and challenges of this technology. It's about thinking, how can we talk to engineers maybe as well, to think about how technologies could be developed in a more inclusive way, in a way that takes into account ethical and social considerations. But also, what obligations would the state have to provide any such supports like technologies in the case of persons with disabilities? So what are the rights of citizens? What are the rights for participation? And again, how can we justify those? What theories are there to help us think of what we think is reasonable to be entitled to? What is the importance of needs? What's the importance of equality? Those are questions around political philosophy. And then one area that's very distinctive for our department in particular, we do a lot of work with the community. So we're doing public philosophy, and it's called P4Z, Philosophy for Children, or Philosophy in Communities. And what we do in that context is that we're trying to translate philosophical thinking into something that is applicable in a real world context. And that is two different ways. One of them is that we try to help students to develop those skills of helping other people engage in reflection, so for example, we have students going into schools when schools were still open to us. We have students doing that on a peer assisted learning level as well. So second year students learn about this philosophical reflection facilitation and then do that with groups of first year students. And we also offer this in a number of other contexts. So for example, with professionals, people thinking about science, and it's about helping people think independently in groups and within their communities around questions that they may think is important or that are being brought up when they're confronted, for example, with artwork. So we have had collaboration with the Tulka Arts Festival and other engagement activities around a number of different topics. Yeah, so I've run you already through the different sub-disciplines or specialisms that we have. History of philosophy. There's much more than what I was talking about. It was just to give you a sense of the different areas. So history of philosophy, especially modern. So we have Kant and Nietzsche, if you've heard the names, are some of the authors we're looking at. Phenomenology as one particular method of thinking about grasping human experience. Different types of ethics. We have a lot of aesthetics and applied philosophy of culture, which also links in with the East Asian philosophy and questions of intercultural dialogue. And then we have the logic and philosophy of science. So it's quite a wide range. You would be covering the different things that usually are considered to be part of a normal philosophy curriculum. What's the way we understand what we're doing is, on the one hand, it's specialist knowledge in those areas, but there's also all the way through, we are developing transferable skills. And philosophy is probably the discipline that most clearly embodies these transferable skills. So we're looking at critical, independent thinking. You're engaging with text, you're understanding the knowledge that is, let's say, about a historical period or about a philosophical method, but you're engaging with it in an independent, critical manner. That doesn't mean you're saying, and this is all rubbish. It's about thinking flexibly and thinking about what things mean and where an argument goes. It's about careful reading and careful analysis of text. So it's about being able to understand, analyze, and then communicate. It's about the development of independent but well-grounded and logically defensible arguments. So you do that in logic, but you would apply that in any of our subject areas. And then it's about confronting the unexpected and developing creative responses. It is also about fostering a certain attitude towards thinking. So when we're convinced of something, we often may be a little bit arrogant because we're convinced this is true. And so it's about finding the right balance between something that we might call intellectual courage, so the courage to maybe take an unpopular stance, to think about things differently from your peers. But it's also about intellectual empathy. So it's about perspective taking, understanding how the arguments of the other side that you may not agree with, but how they work. And on the one hand, try to see, well, where are maybe logical faults, where are the difficulties, but also to try to see how do we understand why people care about this and what can be saved. Most of these arguments, even if you don't agree with, they have a kernel of truth, and maybe they're even more well-grounded than your own, but it's important to understand those as strongly and charitably as possible. And that is called intellectual humility. So to not be too arrogant about your own thoughts, but to learn to enter the thought worlds of others and to then try to balance the different insights that you get and come to an agreement for yourself what makes most sense. And then really what we're very much focusing on is an engagement with contemporary challenges in our worlds. So cultural issues, intercultural dialogue, contemporary technologies, environmental ethics, and often most of our staff members who work on historical topics work on them in a way that is applicable to our current lives as well. And so having those skills will aid you in your academic life more generally. In your future work world, certainly a lot of these skills are being asked for, and also in your future lives as citizens. So especially the kind of the attitudes, the intellectual courage, empathy, and humility are very much important for our lives as citizens. Commonly, you may ask, well, what is common combinations? So we have very close links with sociology and politics, psychology, law, and then traditional humanities subjects like English in particular. We're in a school with history, and film studies, digital media are also commonly combined with us. We have a lot of Connect program students, if those are programs you're interested in. And philosophy hosts the BA in data science and humanities at the moment, but we will see how that develops further. I already mentioned the philosophical dialogue project. So that is the philosophy in communities. And you can see the students definitely had fun and were definitely engaging with the students they were teaching and facilitating. So what we're trying to do there is bringing philosophy in the community, working with groups of peers, obtaining pedagogical knowledge of how to facilitate. So this is really useful if you're thinking about becoming a teacher, becoming somebody who works with other people, increasing those communication skills and facilitation and teamwork. And this is just an image of some of the work that we have been doing with two of our facilitators and one of our students. And this is where we're based. So we're in a small little house. We're a smallish discipline, but we're very accessible. That door cannot be locked, so it is actually always open. And this is our team. So yeah, I think we're at the end, and thank you very much. So I hope that gave you some idea on what philosophy might be like at NUIG. And If you have any questions, you can contact us at the email address there, philosophyadmin@nuigalway.ie.
Okay, it's always a pleasure to talk after philosophers. I always find their talks to be very interesting. And honestly, if I weren't talking about children, youth and studies at NUI Galway, I would say go to philosophy. But what we do is not unlinked to the questions that were brought up by Dr. Feltzman. And I'll start actually by introducing myself. My name is Professor Michal Molcho. I'm the head of discipline of children's studies, and I'm responsible for 2 of the 3 streams that I will present to you. So what is children and youth studies? Why do we want to study it? Why do we want to study it here? So the reason to study it in Galway is because NUI Galway is actually leading the way on children and youth studies. We offer a range of programs that don't exist elsewhere, and we have expertise. And we're using this expertise to ask questions. So some of the questions that we will ask is, what is the child? How do you define a child? And normally on the test today, what we do is we have an activity to see what are your different understanding of what the child is. And it's quite interesting to see that we don't have an agreement about it. But we go all the way from children, roughly around mid-childhood, so say 4 or 5, and all the way to late adolescence, youth. And for us, adolescence actually ends at the age of 25. So you certainly are somewhere there, actually in middle adolescence right now. So we're going to ask you, what does it mean to be a child? What does it mean to be a child in Ireland? What does it mean to be a child in other countries, in the Western world, in Africa, in other countries, in other contexts? Was it always the same? So what you can see is that we're looking at history, we're looking at philosophy, we're looking at literature. How are children being portrayed in the literature, and why? How did children literature changed over time? My background, myself, I'm a sociologist in the field of medical sociology or sociology of health, and my research has always been around adolescent health. So what we have that informs the work that we do, what we are teaching, is our research. So one of the unique things that we have in NUI Galway is that we have some big research areas that are being investigated. The health behaviour in school-age children, the UNESCO Child and Family Research Centre, big study, the first funded study in Ireland on childhood cancer survivors, mental health, adolescents and mental health, children literature. And that actually means that what we teach is informed by research. It means that we do research with children, with adolescents, and we actually are the experts in the field. So, for example, you may have noticed last week that some of the work that we do was in the news. We published I'm part of a very big network, international network. It's called, as the first line on the research slide, the health behavior in school-age children, in school-age children. And we study behaviors, attitudes of children. One of the things that came up when we present our studies, so we collect data. We studied in Ireland adolescents since '98. And we found, for example, that adolescents are not smoking as much as they did in '98. And we can see that across the board, and this is quite a complicated slide, children are smoking less, of all ages, of all genders. And indeed, our ranking internationally is much lower than it used to be back in '98. Also in the news, because these were the two things that caught the attention of the media, was that more kids are feeling low. So then we need, now this was data that were collected in 2018, so that was pre-COVID. And so we need to question, why do we see more children reporting that they're feeling low? What is going on? Is there anything that we're missing out that we need to look at? We also ask children for many other questions, and we're talking about children 15 to 17 years old. So, 10 to 17 years old. So you're included, about the communication with the parents. And we can see that particularly when it comes to communicating with fathers, there was a big increase. So your generation feels much more comfortable to talk to their fathers than people were 20 years ago. Okay, that's a big change. And if you like, what we do is we are looking at changes of generation, what happened over time. And that makes us the experts. And that's a good reason to come and study what we have to offer. For example, we are now in 2021. We're having this Taster Day online, and we do it because of COVID-19. COVID-19 has huge impact on everyone, but particularly on your age group. And what we're doing now in the school, in the UNESCO Center for Child and Family Research, we're looking at what are the things that are influencing your health. How are you feeling? What is the impact of lockdown? What is the impact of school closure? How are you doing? And this is very important for us because that means that we would want to know what can we do to support, and we know that support will be needed. There's enough evidence to date to tell us that there's huge impact for the social isolation that you're experiencing. But not all is lost. If we are going to inform policymakers on the way to address it, then we can work together with policymakers, with teachers, and with you to see how do we overcome this extremely difficult period. Again, this is very important because it puts everything that we do in context. Our lectures are always going to change according to current affairs because that is very relevant. But another aspect of the work that we do, or the program that we are offering, is that we want you to learn by doing. This is going back to the previous presentation. This is a very old philosophy, an approach of saying we are teaching, we are learning by doing. You probably know that sitting in class and listening is one type of learning, but it's not really the most effective way to learn. The most effective way to learn is to work in the community. In some of the programs, you will work in the community in every semester of the program. In others, you will have either a semester or a year-long placement. Okay, who do we work with? Babur International Festival, Jigsaw. We work with philosophy on philosophy for children. We work in the education system. So those who come to us who wants to be teachers, we highly recommend that you try it out first. We have children working in research centers. We have students working in research centers, students working in youth services centers with Childline. We have international placement. We have language exchanges. And what we're trying to do is to offer a range of opportunities that will allow you to really, as you move forward, to make the most informed decision about where you want to go, to take the theories that we teach you and apply them in society. So if you are working, if you take a module on marginalized children groups, then we want you to work with marginalized children groups. If you're having a module on creativity, then we want you to work in a festival. We want you to work in arts, really depending on where it is that you want to go. Under GY 110, you have few streams. What we have in those streams is that those 3 streams are 4-year degrees, so they are longer than the arts degree, but they are longer because you have a placement year. Now you'll either take it as a year or a semester. You will either take it in Ireland or abroad. But what is common to all of this is that those 3 programs are very much skill-based, and that means that during the degree, you're not just learning theories, you're learning skills. One of the things that was mentioned in the previous, that Heike was mentioning, is transferable skills, which is again very important. For me, from my perspective, it's not enough that you learn academic writing. you need to learn other aspects that would be relevant for your life, be it working with children, be it learning how to listen to children. So, for example, we have a module on storytelling in one of those programs. And the program, the module on storytelling, is about finding different ways to hear children. In those modules, you learn to tell stories. And then you teach children to do the same. We have many students that during their placement year did exactly that. So you learn and then you apply it, and then you come out of it and you have such a rich tools of skills, set of skills that you can take with you to whatever degree you're taking, to whatever job you're going to take. And all the degrees are focused on children and youth. Now we have 3 streams on this under this umbrella. We have the stream of BA with Children's Studies, which previously was under the code GY 110. This is a Connect program, and what it means Connect, it means that you're taking 3 art subjects in year 1 together with modules in Children's Studies. Okay, so this gives you, and then on year 2 you drop 1 art subject, you keep the Children's Studies modules, then you have a placement, and you go back to your Children's Studies, to your 2 art subjects for year 4, for your final year. This is a very good program if you want to, if you're not entirely sure that you want to work with children, you don't know quite exactly where you want to go with it, and you also want to have arts subjects with it because you're not sure. So it gives you snippets of Children's Studies, exposure if you like, but it's not going to take over all your degree. It also is good if you want to do a secondary degree, okay, secondary teaching degree teaching in secondary schools, because you will need to have at least 1 teachable subject when you are doing when you want to be ideally 2 if you want to be a post primary teacher. We have the BA in Children's Studies, which previously was under the CAO code GY 121. And this is a denominated degree that focuses only on children. Now I say focuses only on children, but we also have modules from history, from law, from medicine. So you will be sitting in modules from with students from all those areas. And really the focus of this module, of this program, is to understand children, and by children I mean children and youth, to understand how they grow, how they fare, and how to work with children. What is the best way to do it? And again, this would be a program where you will work in the community every single semester from the very first semester. Why? As I said, we believe in learning through doing. So this would be ideal for anyone who wants to be primary school teaching, simply because the skills that you're going to get, the amount of experiences that you're going to get is going to be quite unique. You can combine this degree with modules that will allow you also to work with an add-on of 2 modules to work in early childcare, so that doesn't preclude you from this. We also offer, as part of this degree, training as a registered behavioral technologist, which is something that you don't normally get out of an undergraduate degree. And then we have the 3rd program, previously was GY 120, the BA in Child, Youth and Family Policy and Practice, which focuses on the child, youth and family, looking at services, looking at policy, with but half the program is delivered, is based on sociology and political sciences, and half is more focused on child and youth and family. So it's sort of in between a Connect and a denominated degree. And that is very good, although all 3 can lead you to, for example, social work. This is a very good place to start, and it doesn't focus just on children. So if you want to look at children within the family context, this is probably going to be the best degree for you to take. So what do our graduates do? Do they work in the area? So what we've learned is that we have very high employment rate. We have students that are, or our graduates, some of them work in arts-related jobs, some of them work in childcare. Now, again, we need to always bear in mind that the the requirements for working in every setting, in every sector change. Previously, our graduates work in childcare directly. Now we offer two modules, additional modules to make sure that if you want to work in childcare, you can do it. We have quite a few graduates that went directly to teach abroad, which is a good way to get experience elsewhere, see how the world looks like before you make a decision on whether you want to move on to your next, to another degree. We have students that continue employment from placement. We have, for example, the students that did the module on philosophy for children as part of one of the degrees, and is now doing this work together with True Youth Work Ireland. So he did this work with them. He did it in schools, and that took him onwards to his current job. And I can't tell you how happy he is. People working in the Galway Education Centre, in community and youth work, working in special education needs assistance, because you are going to get a lot of input into how to work with children that have needs, other different needs, with modules that are focusing especially on that. And two of those programs, the children, the BA children with the BA with Children's Studies and in Children's Studies, are housed in the School of Education. So you can see that those links with education centres, with community, with the special needs assistance are quite obvious. For further education, many of our students are going on to do primary school teaching after the degree. And indeed, both the BA with Children's Studies and the BA in Children's Studies are seen by many as a backdoor for primary school teaching. Personally, I think that it's probably a better start, simply because you're not boxed into one occupation. You have 4 years to experience if this is really what you want to do. And then if this is it, you go on and complete your degree. If you have 2 art subjects or 1, you can go and complete a degree of MPE in secondary school teacher and become a school teacher. Many of our students continue to social work, and I have to say is that from the 3 programs, the success rate of getting into social work programs all over Ireland, which are very competitive, is extremely high. So the training that we give, the work that we do, and the placement and the work throughout the degree prepare you to social work in a very good way. We have students that continue to play therapy, art therapy, child psychology, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and even we have some students that specifically are interested in pediatric nursing, which is something that unfortunately you cannot do currently in Ireland, but you can complete elsewhere. So the range of opportunities is quite unique, and you're going to be equipped with skills that will allow you to fit in to all those degrees in all those occupations. And one thing that we do is we start very early on to have conversations with you about what is it that you want to do. So we make sure that the experiences that you're going to have throughout the degree will expose you to these areas that you want to explore, will give you those skills, and will make you very competitive applicants, both for the job, for the labour market, and to postgraduate degrees. So thank you very much for listening. You can always get in touch through the Pubbles or find me, Michal Molcho, at NUI Galway. And we're always going to we're always going to answer your questions, because really choosing the right degree is a very important thing. And I think it's very important that you will ask all the questions before you're making that decision. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jackie Murphy, and I'm going to be talking to you about sociology and politics as soon as I get the go-ahead from these wonderful people that are helping us today.
You're live.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So my name is Jackie Murphy, and I am here from the School of Political Science and Sociology, and I want to talk to you about perhaps considering taking your undergraduate degree in sociology and politics. Okay, so just what I'm hoping to do in this presentation is to give you a little insight into what sociology and politics is, a kind of understanding of what it is that you'd be studying and you'd be thinking about as you took on this subject, what it might give to you in regards to future career prospects, but also how it might assist you throughout your academic career as well. So in regards to studying sociology and politics, there are many, many different reasons as to why you might take our subject on. And I want to explain some of those reasons for you today. The interesting thing, and as our wonderful speakers have been talking to you about this morning, the strength that our department offers you is the fact that we have many colleagues that are involved in really interesting areas of research that perhaps you might like to get to know a little bit more about as well. So that's what I would like to talk to you about. Now, the really interesting thing, and why I really want to talk to you today about sociology and politics, is that now sociology and politics is a leaving cert subject. So that means that if you liked the talk this morning, perhaps you might decide that you want to take sociology and politics for your leaving cert subject. But also, if you're interested in secondary school teaching, you might decide that you want to take sociology and politics on as one of those subjects that you'll teach with. Okay, right, so let's have a chat. What is sociology and politics all about? Well, when we're beginning to talk about this, let's just have a conversation about where we are right now and how it is that we got here. So normally, if we were in our taster days, you would have gotten the opportunity to travel into Galway to sit with me on campus. We'd probably be in one of our great lecture halls and we'd be having a chat about it. But we're not in that society right now, are we? We're in a very strange place. If you think about where we've come from over the last 12 months, think of all of the new things that you've gotten used to, think about all the changes that have been made politically. This is what we really want to understand when it comes to sociology and politics. So just think about you right now. Where are you sitting? What Wi-Fi system are you using? What technology are you engaging with us in? How are you learning about all of the different subjects that you might decide to take on for arts program? All of these different things have all come about in regards to how we decide to respond and to react to things within our society and within politics. So I guess when it comes to studying sociology and politics, what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand how did we get here and how are we responding to this. So if you're interested in understanding who gets to make the decision as to whether or not I take the Leaving Cert this year, what way will I be assessed? If you're interested in understanding about, I guess like my colleagues previously before the break were talking about, what happens to children who are trying to do their study right now, but they're in houses that don't have computers or phones or access to Wi-Fi. How are we looking out for those? So, and I haven't even started to talk about all the political stuff that's been going on, have I? So like even thinking about Brexit, thinking about the elections that just happened in the States a couple of months ago. Our society right now is swirling with lots and lots of different contemporary changes, and sociology and politics is the subject that helps you to understand this, understand what's going on. Maybe you see that there's room for change within our society or within politics, and that's why you might take on this subject. Or maybe you like things just as they are, so you want to make arguments to see how we can sustain it. Well, if you're interested in trying to understand what's happening to us, then perhaps sociology and politics is the subject for you. So what I wanted to do in this taster lecture is just to give you a little idea about what it is that you might actually be exploring as a student within sociology. So the first thing is that I want you to look at this picture of this girl. So let's imagine she's about 3 or 4. And you know, I don't know if you have little cousins or sisters or brothers, or even if you've been babysitting. If you have a 3 or 4-year-old, all they want to know is why. Why this, you know, this, they don't just take the first answer, they want to go a little bit deeper, they want to understand a little bit more. And I think that study into sociology is really like that.
we dig a little deeper. We try and look behind what's happening and what we see at face value. And we try and understand how all of these things contribute then to the world in which we find ourselves living in, to the very way that I'm sitting across the screen from you right now, talking about your decision to come to university. So sociology is the academic discipline which is dedicated to a very systematic study of society. So what does that mean? Well, we all have our different opinions in regards to what's happening in society, and we all have our different ideas around what's good or maybe what's not so good. What sociology allows you to do is to take quite a scientific way in trying to understand all of the different layers and all of the different things that are going on that's bringing us to this situation. So as a student of sociology, you are beginning to learn how society works and what's going on within us and within society that helps us to understand that. So say, for example, let's take this little girl that's in front of you now. If this little girl is a traveller girl living in Ireland right now, there's a very good possibility that she's going to die younger than a settled girl that would be the same age as her. So what's happening within Irish society that we still have mortality levels like this? Are that there are groups within Irish society that are being treated differently and have very different life outcomes just based upon their identity. So these are some of the things that you get to learn as you become to take on the study of Soc and Paul, as we call it here at NUIG. So I thought what would be fun for you, and you're after your tea break now, so hopefully you've had a chance to get up and you've had a little break. So come with me on a little experiment. So this is the type of thing that you'll be studying when you come to college with us. We're going to do, what I'm going to ask you to do is just to have a little read of this case study. So I hope that the screen is big enough for you there and that you'll be able to see it. And just while I'm here explaining about it, I just want you to read it, okay? It's just a short case study about a different culture and I want you to see what you think about it. So I'm going to stay quiet for about 30 seconds. Oh, the guys will be worried, dead air. But I'm going to stay quiet and just give you the chance to read this. I'll give you about another 10 seconds now. So again, you're just reading this, thinking about what does this tell us about culture? What does this tell us about society? Okay. Okay, so let's have a look at this case study that's here in front of you. First of all, I wonder, did you think that this society was contemporary? Does it exist now? Or is it something that happened in the past? Secondly, I want you to think, does this society exist close to us? Is it similar to our own Irish society? Or is it very different? Now, if you thought as you were reading down through that case study that this is maybe about people who might live in maybe the developing countries or countries far away from us, or maybe you thought that it was in the past, you wouldn't be wrong. However, that's not who this is about. Let's take the name of this culture, Nacromia. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to spell it backwards. And as you'll see, it's American. So let's take another look at what you've just been reading. Let's look at this thing that talks about the human body being ugly and that we have to do stuff to it. Well, do you have a bathroom mirror? Do you have a magic bag full of lotions and potions that if you think you rub it on you, you'll be lovely and you'll be fine? I bet very few people actually leave without brushing their teeth or doing things like that. So again, or let's look a little bit further down in the case study. Let's look at here when we talk about the fact that that people go to these medicine people and they hand over money. Well, I wonder, if you think about the last time you went to a doctor, you probably went, they probably handed you a prescription, which somebody paid for. Then you might have taken that prescription. And I don't know if you've ever tried to read one of those things, but they're impossible to understand. But you trusted what was written in that prescription, that if you handed it into a pharmacy with more of your money or your magic beans, that you'll get back a medicine that would cure you. And look at all the systems that you believe in order to make that come about. So what this little experiment teaches us to do, so what happened here? Let's think about what happened here. Well, first of all, probably the way that this case study is written makes you, the language that's used here, makes you think that this must be about somebody else other than you. So within sociology, it's very interesting how different groups begin to think about themselves, but then also think about the other. Also, there's power and authority happening here. So I asked you to read the case study. You didn't think that I would trick you. I did. But again, you had faith in these structures that are already existing within society. And that's what sociology is all about. Psychology often looks at how we think about things inside ourselves or inside the individual, whereas sociology is looking at outside of that and how we engage with one another as a result of that. So if you like this kind of thing, if you start to think about, I like this idea of studying social interaction and beginning to understand what's going on. This is what your degree within sociology will provide you with. And again, what we're doing is we're attempting not to take things for granted. We're trying not to take things just as we see it, but rather we're scientifically trying to understand them. And this can be very uncomfortable for us because we become used to seeing society in a certain way. So it's like if you fold your arms with me right now. So wherever you are, just fold your arms. And that feels comfortable, right? Okay, now fold your arms the opposite way. That's where it gets to be a little uncomfortable. I'm really bad at doing that. But if you have managed to kind of fold your arms in the opposite way, doesn't your muscles feel uncomfortable? Isn't it a strange thought process that's going on? Well, that's what your study about sociology is all about, is understanding that perhaps through the different socialization techniques that have gone on within society, we might not really be questioning what's happening anymore. And sociology gives you the skills to do that. Now here within NUI Galway, you might remember I mentioned to you that sociology and politics is now a leaving cert subject. So not only do you study sociology with us, but you also study politics. And this is a very interesting thing, and it's certainly one of the selling points of our school. So our school at the moment, the School in Political Science and Sociology, is one of the only universities that will offer you both sociology and politics studied together as one subject. So that's really, really useful for you if you're thinking of continuing on in perhaps a teaching career. So not only do you study sociology and what's happening with society, but you also gain an insight into political science. And political science and politics is all about what are the decisions that we make that helps us to understand, really defines how we should live together. Who gets to make the decisions about what happens to us within a pandemic? Think of all those anti-protest marches that were maybe going on yesterday on St. Patrick's Day. What was going on in their mind? So they felt they had the right to protest, to come out, to say that they had a right to be there and that they don't like the current conditions that the government are putting in. But yet we have the government and NEFET that are saying that we need these safety precautions going on within our country, within our society. We think that politics and sociology sit so well together, because in order to understand politics, you really have to understand the society in which those people find themselves making the decisions in. When I say those people, I mean us. So your study into political science allows you to understand all of the different systems and structures that different kind of countries and areas have brought into place in order to kind of come up with these decisions. But you also move into these ideas around policy as well. So understanding how decisions are made and how they impact upon us. An interesting thing about political science is that you also go study it with history a little. So I like this quote from Hobbes. You learn to study, you learn loads of great things from people with absolutely fabulous hair. I mean, check out Hobbes's hair here. But Hobbes said that without politics, without a strong sense of government, there would be no place for industry, no culture, no arts, no society. But check this out. Look how bad he thinks it'll get. There would be continual fear, danger, violent death, and that our life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Jesus, that would not be such a great thing to be experiencing. But Hobbes was making a point here. He was thinking about what is it like when we actually need to put decisions into play, and then what are the implications of that, of those things upon our society. So let's see. If you decide to come and study sociology and politics, these are the kind of things that you will be learning about. And here is the skill set that you gain from your first year of study with us. So you gain a thorough understanding of society, and also you look at the many, many different theories which exist that tries to explain why things are the way they are. You also gain a thorough understanding of political ideologies, and not just at a national level, but we also look at that within a European level as well. Very importantly, rather than relying on opinion, you learn how to apply political and sociological knowledge to key debates that are going on, both locally and globally. For example, now our first years are currently taking on work within looking at gender rights and gender studies. And they're also looking at things like anarchism and protests, such as the things that we see happening around us. Sociology and politics gives you the skill set to be able to understand and then to argue the different ideas as to why things are happening. I mentioned at the start as well that I have wonderful colleagues that work in the school with us that have great research skills, and they are specialists in many areas such as social media, social structures, human rights, gender, equality, such important issues that are facing us today. So coming in and taking on sociology and politics with us means that you are able to understand these issues at a much deeper level. And perhaps you might be the person that will be able to come up with the policy responses to these. So what is the skill set you gain with us? Well, undertaking a degree within sociology and politics, or even taking it as your first year in arts, we focus on providing you with skills within critical thinking and problem solving. So how do we understand what's happening? How do we look at it from various different aspects? We put a lot of effort into you perfecting both your verbal and your written communication skills, because we see that as absolute necessities. So you're not always writing essays in sociology and politics. Sometimes you'll be doing presentations like this. And again, the key skills and the things that I think that really add benefit to your degree, and you'll have heard it from our other speakers today about transferable skill sets, is that you will gain the skills to be able to assess valid and reliable sources of information, to make sense of all of the stuff that's thrown at you every day, to start to understand, okay, well, how is this written? What is providing the research for it? How is the standing there for it? And again, you'll be able to come up with the strong academic arguments. So I've got 2 minutes left to just explain to you, the different career sets that sociology and politics prepare you for. So of course, anything within the public sector, but also this goes very well for those of you that might be interested in journalism, in media, also in advocacy or lobbying. Interestingly also, and where my background is it prepares you for careers within development studies, within the community and voluntary sector, within social work. And of course, as sociology and politics is now a Leaving Cert subject, it can also team up really well with one of the subjects for secondary school teaching. Our students that take on sociology and politics, they find it really, really useful for them and helpful for them in first year, because it helps them to learn how to write good essays, how to assess arguments, how to find the reading to support the arguments that you're making. So we find that our students often take this subject with psychology, with economics, with geography, history, indeed the whole range of them. So I guess within my last minute, or 30 seconds, we've got a number of different programs that are available to you to take sociology and politics through. You can take it as a single subject, or indeed you can take one of these denominated programs as well. So our BA in Government focuses on law, economics and politics. Our BA in Applied Social Studies takes in Sociology and Politics with Geography. And our BA in Children, Youth and Family Studies, well, you heard all about that before the break. So I guess if you've got any questions at all, you can just check out our website. All of our information is available to you on our website. You can also contact us if you've got any questions, and we'll be more than happy to help you. But the most important thing is good luck with your journey, and I hope that you find the subjects that suit you. Thank you so much.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the taster for geography here at NUI Galway. It's a grey day outside, but I'm not going to give you a weather announcement because I'm a human geographer and not a physical geographer. And for those of you that have taken any geography, you'll know the differences. So what I'm going to do for this 20 minutes, I suppose, is just talk you through geography here at NUI Galway and try and give you a feel for the subject and try and give you the information that I think you need in order to think about geography as an option as you make decisions about subject choices. So the first thing to say is, I suppose, that we are a fairly large discipline. There's 18 full-time academic staff on board, with a huge range of expertise and lots of teaching experience as well. So we have individuals who cover rural and urban issues, individuals including myself who look at population change, migration, integration. We have lots of geographers looking at environment sustainability, climate change, other individuals that are involved in environment and sustainability, looking at these issues particularly along the coast, as we are located on the coast. So it's a very diverse department with a huge range of expertise and a huge range of subjects or modules that you can become involved in. And for a lot of you, you'll actually already have some idea as to what geography is. You'll have had experience of geography in primary school, or for a lot of you, you'll have had experience of geography as a junior certificate subject. And so geography studies both the human and the physical world and the human environment interactions between the natural and the social. And in doing so, it incorporates not only the social and the natural, but also the humanities. So the natural sciences focus mostly on examining the natural world through scientific methods. So there's a lot of lab work involved where you go out and you gather data on physical processes and you bring it back into the lab, and it's very much about an engagement through a scientific lens. The humanities dimension or the humanities overlaps with geography because of the importance of culture within historical geography, within cultural geography, even social and political geography. So material on the arts and art, language, philosophy and history are also very important in the context of geography. And I think just before me, Jacqueline from Politics and Sociology was talking about the social sciences, and geography also incorporates a lot of work in that field. And so my work, for example, in migration is fundamentally overlapping with sociology and politics. And it really focuses my work and sort of social geographies more broadly, focus on the relationships between individuals, communities and institutions. And the geographical dimension is that it's really focused on how these relationships play out in different kinds of places at different scales. So we can think about relationships or geographies in the context of a small neighborhood, or at the national scale, or even at the international scale. And so that's how sort of the geographical lens adds value to the social sciences. So I suppose as a geographer, I'm a little bit biased, but I do think geography is a phenomenal subject, and that it's phenomenally important that students engage with it in some way or another, because of that unique lens that it adds or lends to studying really important issues such as climate change, such as sustainability, population movement, economic development, the list goes on and on. We can think about the insights, for example, even in our current context of the lockdown, in terms of how geography can be applied to understand not only the distribution of disease, but also where hotspots may emerge, and how then that information can feed back into public health policy. And there's a long history of geography being involved in public health, all the way back to the 1800s, when it was a geographer realized in the cholera outbreak in London that it was a specific tap in London that was responsible. And they were able to actually figure that out by looking at distributions of disease. And they went and took the handle off the tap, and the number of individuals becoming infected fell fairly dramatically. So geography has huge importance in terms of its ability to engage with these big important issues of our time. Now, a lot of you may not be planning to do geography for your Leaving Cert. Some of you might not even have done geography for Junior Cert, and that's fine. In the geography department at NUI Galway, we don't assume any prior knowledge in an academic context. But we do, I suppose, accept or emphasize the fact that we all have a certain amount of knowledge that is geographical, even if we're not calling it that. So if you've studied history, if you've studied business, if you studied maths, or even art to some extent, these skills and this knowledge that you have will serve you well in the context of the subject of geography at university. And so it's a very flexible subject. It's a very, I suppose, open subject, and is one that I really encourage individuals to consider. Now, my own experience of geography at university was that I took it as a filler subject when I was in first year. I had planned to study 2 other subjects. I won't name them just in case it seems like I'm putting them down. But I went in with the assumption that I was going to do geography and Soc and Pol as my filler subjects in first year, and they actually became my degree. And I absolutely loved how they fit together and how they overlapped. And so I would certainly highlight that there are some subjects that are naturally, or some subjects that naturally lend themselves to being studied in in unison with geography. So Soc and Paul comes to mind just from my own experience. I had a lot of friends who studied a language with geography. Other individuals did law or economics. It's a really versatile subject that actually goes very well with most of the other arts and humanities subjects here at NUI Galway. And so what are the benefits of a geographical approach? I suppose for me, the benefits are that it is a very holistic subject. It's a very, and it provides a very holistic view of the world. So here in this picture, we can see that there's been a minor landslide of some sort. And as a geographer, I immediately start to think about, oh, what caused this? Was there a huge amount of rain that caused a landslide? Was it something to do with coastal erosion? But then, in addition to thinking about those natural explanations, I also think about the human, right? So was this the result of poor planning? Is it tourist development on a sand dune where development shouldn't have happened? Was it legal or illegal, the building that is? And so all of these questions need to be considered to fully understand the problem at hand. And this is a very small scale hazard, so to speak, but that same approach, that holistic approach, is very important in considering natural hazards at a range of scales. We could think about, I just finished helping my son in second year with a CBA on Hurricane Sandy. And so in order to think about the geographical implications of Hurricane Sandy, it's important not just to understand the role of climate change and the role of weather patterns and the role of ocean warming, but also why the destruction was so intense. And it was because of where it hit, the volume of people that were in that place. And so geography really provides that holistic approach for engaging with these real world issues in a very meaningful way. So I suppose I've said this already in a number of ways, but geography really enables you to look at the world from different perspectives and helps to really shape your thoughts and your decisions and your actions, and allows you to really explore the world in a very holistic way. So, for example, if we were to think again about a global challenge, we'll take climate change, because it's so important that we actually fully engage with this. And obviously, just like with Hurricane Sandy, we have to think about the natural dimensions of climate change. And then as a human geographer, I suppose I'm also more interested in some ways in the human impact of climate change. How will it impact agriculture? How will it impact people's livelihoods and how people live and work? And how will those changes or impacts vary around the globe? So we're not going to have the same impact on the west coast of Galway as we might have in sub-Saharan Africa. What do we need to know about these different kinds of ecosystems and how people live and work in those ecosystems? So that human environment interaction is absolutely essential as we move forward and start to think about solutions. And one thing that's really interesting in the work that I do, which is on migration, is that the impacts of climate change are being felt in what has historically been a very social science-based area of research. But now we're starting to look at things like climate migration, for example. And so again, it's really, really important that we understand the connections between both the human and natural world. And that's why I think you should study geography, because it really enables you to look at the world from different perspectives. And it also is a really open field. So it doesn't commit you to a future career, but allows you all of these possibilities. So at one point in time, I was working in a secondary school. At another point in time, I was working for a non-profit organization in Los Angeles, organizing fundraising events in Hollywood. And the reason I got that job was because I actually had GIS skills, which allowed me to help with some of the research that they were doing on groundwater and where wells should be located. So geography is just one of those subjects that really opens a whole range of pathways that you mightn't actually even be able to imagine at this point in time. So there's 3 different ways that you can engage with geography at NUI Galway. The first is the traditional route in through the BA, which is the joint honours route, where you do geography with another subject. Jacqueline, just previous to me, mentioned the BSc in social sciences, so that's sort of an interdisciplinary program that features geography and sociology and politics, along with some other social science subjects. And then finally, there's the BSc in Geography and Geosystems, which is a more physical program. So the Bachelor of Arts has 3 core modules in first year, covering the human dimension of geography, the physical dimension of geography, and the practical dimension of geography, because here at NUI Galway, we really try and emphasize that geography isn't just a classroom subject. You have to get out into the world and actually learn about the world by being out there in it, not just by studying lecture notes and reading in the library. So that ethos is brought through then in second and third year, where you can specialize in the human or physical depending on what your preference is. And if you have questions about the geography in the context of the BA, please feel free to email my colleague John McDonough. He'd be more than happy to help you out with any questions that you have. The next one is the GY123, the BSc in Social Sciences. This is a 4-year program that is really, really nice because it has an international field trip in year 2. It has work placement in year 3 and a research project in year 4. And Mike Hines is the person to contact if you want more information on that. Oh. Apologies there. And sorry, there we go. Sorry about that. The third program then is the BSc in Geography and Geosciences. And this, like I said, is a more physical program, and it really is designed to tackle environmental issues such as climate change or biodiversity loss, with an emphasis really on field-based learning and I suppose training a workforce with capacity for work in science, policy and management. Now, one thing that I'm really conscious of is in terms of making that transition to third level from secondary school can be a bit daunting. And geography is really lucky that we have this CAME program, which is a support program for geography students where first years meet together in small groups along with second and third years who've been trained to lead these groups. And it's very informal. People get together and they do their assignments, they prepare for exams. And perhaps even more important than the getting together and preparing for exams is that it's very social. So it's somewhere that you can drop in and have a cup of coffee, get to know people, and meet other geography students who are in the same boat as yourself. And I love this program. I'm involved as the academic leader in geography in it, but I love the feedback that I get from first years. You know, they say things like that they absolutely loved it. It really helped them to settle into geography and to NUI Galway more broadly, that they met lots of new people, that they met their best friends in this program, that the small groups really helped them with their work. and that it just made life easier. So I think, you know, that's pretty good to know that students actually enjoy the experience and that there is support there for you as you make that transition. So geography skills, and I'm sure everybody has spoken about the skills that you pick up with your degree: data analysis, project management, fieldwork and lab experience, computer skills, a whole range of skills that you can bring with you out into the world, which is really, really important. These skills are not just academic skills, but they're fully transferable into the working world. And that is certainly important, because you're not in university just to learn facts and numbers. Obviously, you'll be thinking about your future career as well. And some specific employment opportunities for students with a geography background: jobs in heritage and tourism, community development, planning, environmental management. Similar to what Jacqueline said before, the NGO sector, public sector, lots of scope for geography students, and of course teaching. We've further educational opportunities as well that I'm not going to go into, but just know that there are these pathways that are there and available for further teaching and training for future employability pathways. So if you've any other questions, feel free to have a look at the geography website, and I certainly look forward to seeing you all in a couple of years, or next year if that's where you're at in your educational career. The best of luck, and thank you very much for listening.
You're good to go, Anita. Just click on the PowerPoint there.
Hi, sorry, how do I change the slides?
Just click.
Okay, okay. Oh, sorry. How do I go back?
Back arrow.
Back to... No, this is going ahead. Okay, okay, okay. I see the small arrows. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why it's not sharing my screen. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'd like to share with you some of the thoughts about the subject of human rights. And I don't know if you've ever heard about this subject. Probably yes, you hear in the news about war, about war and peace, about conflicts, about migration crisis, about poor countries. All of these issues are related to human rights. And I am the program director of the BA Connect with Human Rights, which is a program that gives you, it's a very interdisciplinary program that gives you the possibility to study 2 art subjects in combination with human rights, which you're going to study at Irish Centre for Human Rights, which is one of the world's premier institutions focused on the study, research, investigation and promotion of international human rights law, international humanitarian law, and international criminal law, and many other subjects. We have a thriving community of scholars, PhD students, LLMs, masters, and now luckily many students from the BA programs, which are a very welcome addition to the centre. And they're an integral part of the life of the centre. This is quite a unique course in Ireland. It's the only undergrad programs that has got this type of combination with human rights, because human rights, maybe some of you were not familiar with it, it's traditionally a subject taught at postgraduate level. It's usually for the LLMs or for the PhD students to specialize in international human rights law, while this program at undergrad level gives you the possibility to actually start studying it at the BA level, together with many other subjects that you can choose from a group of subjects offered in arts, which you can see in the brochures and check in the website, because there are certain subjects that you can combine with human rights, and my suggestion would be always to combine it, for example, with languages, because this program is mainly for those of you that are interested in working abroad, in working in international organizations, in working in development aid agencies, with Irish Aid, for example, with Irish Department of Foreign Affairs, or with European Union institutions. So it's really mainly targeted to people that would choose an abroad, an international career. But of course, you can also use this program as a foundation for many type of careers in Ireland as well, where there are loads of charities and NGOs working in development, working in human rights and related subjects. So it is a very contemporary, like human rights is a very contemporary topic, which is interesting more and more people, luckily, but mostly because there are many human rights crises around the world. So is a BA Connect, which is a 4-year BA degree program. And as I said, you study a specialist subject area and 2 other subjects. And this is the code for the CAO, Bachelor of Arts with Human Rights. As I was saying, you will stay at the Irish Centre for Human Rights. And the characteristics of this program is really that we have very small seminars, small classes. So you have the possibility to interact, to engage a lot in class activities, which is a very important point of the Irish Centre for Human Rights, and something we really put a great effort on keeping classes to a maximum of 25, 27 students, so that it's possible for you to interact with us, with the lecturers, with the PhD students as much as you can. Many of the classes are very student-centered, so beyond the classical lecture styles, you will interact through role plays, simulations, presentations, case studies. Our students last year, they created their blogs, which we published on our human rights page. please go and check our website, which contains lots of information about news, about events, about policy work. Many of us do, we are academics, but we also work a lot on policy. So we do lots of jobs with international organizations, with European Union, and with United Nations as consultants or as experts or as academics that we work on certain specific topics. So please do check on the website so that you can have really wider ideas. We have a huge group of PhD students, like we have 30 PhD students and a huge cadre of alumni from past years. So give a look at it and you'll probably discover more about what are human rights, why are so important, what do we do. I'll just give you a brief overview of what are you going to study, what is this about. This is a picture, I don't know if you ever heard of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the foundational document which states the 30 most important fundamental articles of human rights. And from here, thousands of documents and hundreds of human rights treaties have come from this document, which was drafted and voted by the General Assembly in 1948. And what we're going to study in the first year is exactly related to it's a very general it's a very general overview of what are human rights, the historical origins, the philosophical foundations, the history, the theory. It's a year in which we give you the chance to enter into a very different subject, and we give you an understanding of what is international law, how it's related to national law, what is the difference. And again, because this is an interdisciplinary program, the whole subject has got an interdisciplinary outlook, which means that we go a lot into the legal aspects, but also into the political science aspects, and together with the combination with other different disciplines, because human rights by itself, it's an interdisciplinary topics, and the course adds to that interdisciplinarity with art subjects. So we are technically under the School of Law, but it's not the human rights part of it. It's not just, it doesn't give you only a legal foundation, but it tries to give you a legal, political, philosophical, historical foundation around human rights. And we slowly give you an overview of how the international system of protection works, how the United Nations works, how the region protection works. So what's the difference between going to the United Nations bodies and committees that promote and protect human rights, or how do you go, why people instead seek for protection through the European Court of Human Rights, for example. What is that difference? How do they protect differently human rights? And how in Ireland your human rights are protected, which you actually going to, we slowly go into the international and then into the regional protection level, going from first year to second year. It's built in layers so that you can actually restrict from the international to the regional to the national protection of human rights, so that you can understand how this human rights protection works. I have here a picture of, as you heard on the news today, it's everywhere, on the migration crisis, on the human trafficking crisis that we are facing in Europe and abroad. We've never had so many, we have millions of refugees around the world. And it's one of the topics, for example, that's taught in the second year in a course, in a module called Contemporary Issues in Human Rights, where you're going to, where PhD students and lecturers are going to teach you about refugee law, migrants law, the problem of human trafficking, but it's called contemporary issues, so it also looks at other topics and subjects of interest, such as gender rights, women's rights, transgender rights, and implications around all these contemporary issues in human rights. And it's really done to give you a flavor on the most important and hot issues we are facing today. But it'll only happen after you will have an understanding of the international protection system, of the regional protection system, so that you really can understand how each of these topics receives different protections from the national to the regional to the international level. And all of this is to prepare you for the third year, which is the year where you're going to do the specialist. So it's an entirely dedicated to human rights, and you will have different modules taught in the first semester, which are going to give you more of a picture of what would be the application of human rights at national level. So you can choose from a combination of modules from the School of Law, including criminal law, admin law, constitutional law, which is extremely important to understand how human rights work at national level, legal methods and research, which is absolutely an important subject for you if you want to continue to do research, advocacy, diversity and human rights, how you differently approach the topic of human rights, European Union law and the Irish legal system. And all of this is to prepare you for the second semester, which is what really is appealing to most of you. It's the placement in the second semester. And we have an established network of national and international partners. And our students have the opportunity to work in a professional environment in human rights with premier human rights organizations. And you can decide whether you want to stay in Ireland or you want to do it in Europe or you want to do it outside of the European Union and have a completely different experience. So, for example, this is just few of the organizations that we've sent last year our students, just to give you an idea of where our students would go. So they would go to the work for the Death Penalty Project in the UK, in London, or with Minority Rights Group International in London as well, or they could go to the Pat Finucane Centre in Northern Ireland, or they could stay with the Community Law and Mediation in Ireland. There are different types of jobs and that cover different areas. So some of you might have, we try to accommodate students' preferences, but of course there's a competitive process for the placement and you have to go through that particular competitive process. But we try to engage with you and understand whether you might have an interest in working with a particular area like children's rights or women's rights or migrants' rights, and whether you have and you want to have your experience in Ireland or in Europe or abroad. So you could choose and combine, for example, a placement with a language, which is usually what most students are doing. So, for example, if you choose to do a language together with human rights, you might choose a placement in Spain if you're doing Spanish, or in France if you're doing French, or in Germany if you're studying German as well. It's usually something that I'm happy to coordinate with the language program coordinators, because languages are a skills and something that is needed in order to complete a human rights career. So it's extremely important that it's one of the suggestions that you always give is like to learn one another language at least in order to have more chances for your CV to open it up to a more of an international career. But as I said, there are also many places in Ireland, and in fact I'm going to speak in a minute about careers, which I think it's probably what might interest you more about, okay, what do I do with the BA in Human Rights, with BA in BA Connect with Human Rights. This is a student testimonial before I jump into careers, before concluding this brief conversation about the BA with Human Rights. The Human Rights Program says, David, in NUI offers students the opportunity to study a dynamic, fascinating field in conjunction with the internationally renowned Irish Centre for Human Rights. The course is taught by passionate, experienced instructors and combines theory and practical application seamlessly. Again, we have other testimonials on the website, so I'll still invite you to check all the activities, which are really numerous, that the Irish Centre for Human Rights does organize every weekly. And in terms of career prospects, the program provides a solid basis for those willing to work in the area of human rights, obviously, but whether in Ireland or abroad. And I repeat, in career prospects include working with United Nations, working with the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs, working with Irish Aid in development cooperation agencies. And in Ireland, you can definitely look at it for a public administration job, public service job, state agencies, NGOs, civil society organizations, international non-governmental organizations, and development cooperation agencies. It really opens you up for a broad range of careers, because the subjects are very contemporary, are very interdisciplinary, and because we provide students with a broad range of skills beyond academic skills, which include research skills, writing skills, presentation skills, all sorts of critical critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, all sorts of skills that you're gonna need obviously in your future professional career, in whatever professional career you would need. But it invites you to work either with the state or with civil society organizations or with private foundations, and you're going to have the skills to be open up to a very huge range of careers. Of course, it is a perfect basis if you want to continue an LLM and specialize in one of our LLM courses in either human rights law or migration law or international criminal law. Some of our students have the BA decide to specialize because they maybe want to continue with a PhD in the future, or because today you need to specialize with an LLM or a master for any type of whether national or international careers. So I really think that I would stop here. I think I've finished my time, and I'm very happy to take any of your questions by email if you want. Like, all the contact details are on website.